of the Holy Spirit. St. Paul today speaks about sowing and reaping, giving generously and receiving back in kind. And then in the Gospel we hear about lending, expecting nothing in return. It's not really lending, it's giving. And then we hear at the end, be merciful as your Father in heaven is merciful. There's a constant theme throughout what St. Paul and Christ are talking about today, and they're talking about charity. St. Paul talking about charity of monetary things, and Christ talking about charity of heart, loving those who hate you, being merciful, and lending, expecting nothing in return. It's interesting that these two readings fall together, and the Church has put them together because they do complement each other. We should think of our charity as it relates to our monetary giving as this type of spiritual discipline, similar to the way I've described fasting to you. Fasting is not an end in and of itself. I told you, but it's a tool. It teaches us self-restraint. So we fast Wednesdays and Fridays throughout the year, and then we intensify our fasts during the Great Lenten cycles. The whole point of this is to practice on little things self-restraint, so that when we are tempted, we've already done it. We already know what it feels like to say no to a temptation, because we practice on something small like food. This same process is what it is at work here when St. Paul is talking about sowing monetarily, and Christ is talking about developing a charitable heart, giving and being merciful. St. Paul is telling us that if you distribute acts of charity, then you will learn what it means to be charitable. And those questions that Christ has asked you to do, to love those who hate you, you'll be more able. Yes, St. Paul is telling you, give to charity and to the church. And there's many reasons to give to the church. There's the needs of the church in terms of just being here. There's the ministries that the church provides. But there's also this development of a charitable heart. Not for the church's own sake, but for your sake. Not as a reflection of how much I love God, but in recognition of the fact that, you know what? I could always be more loving and more charitable. And how do I learn that? Father, I want to have a gentler heart. How do I do that? Start by giving. Because as you give those things that are important to you, you will begin to realize how important they are to others, and how what you are able to let go of might be the only thing that someone else is reaching out for. And so, when you come across someone on the street who is hungry, who has no home, you can reach into your pocket and give to them, because your church and your God has taught you to practice giving in His house as a discipline and an exercise for the real thing. When there's disasters in the world, in our Philoptochos, in our Archdiocese, in IOCC, and the Red Cross, and many, many other charitable organizations are responding. Do you feel inclined to give and to support those who are recovering from floods and tornadoes and fires? If we don't, it's maybe because we haven't developed a charitable heart here at home. We really want to minister to those in the midst of their greatest suffering. We need to practice our own suffering just a little bit We need to give and make ourselves a little bit uncomfortable so that we can empathize with the discomfort of others. If that means making ourselves just a little poorer, then so be it, because we will understand the poverty of those around us. It's amazing that the word, and we maybe miss it, at the end of today's gospel, when Christ says, "Be merciful as your Father in heaven is merciful." The word in Greek for being merciful is related to eleos, have mercy. And we say it again and again and again throughout the service today. Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy. We are constantly asking. But that word is the same word for alms, for giving to the poor and helping. So as we are in this church and we stand in front of God and we ask Him for His mercies, Christ is telling us He has given you a gift, your own life, expecting nothing in return. You be merciful. You give alms, expecting nothing in return. If you don't have that naturally as a charity of heart, you don't get to escape it. It doesn't say, if you are charitable heart, be merciful as my Father is merciful. He says this is something we need to develop. So if it is something that we struggle with, loving those who hate us, taking care of the poor, then we should probably start with this spiritual discipline of giving to His church, so that we can learn the lesson, charity of heart, not just because the church needs money, not just because we have ministries to operate, but because I want to know what it feels like and be able to be merciful as my Father in heaven is merciful.